Thank you for having me here. I am a Wildcat one time, and hopefully soon, if the thesis works out, a Wildcat 2 times. So I really appreciate being here and appreciate what you do. Sarah gave me wide latitude in what I would speak with you about today. I don't really need it, because mostly what I speak about with nonprofits and with business professionals and with leaders is how those three things combine together. How we make change in the world, how business can be part of that change, and why we need leadership to do it. And I feel, as all of you are leaders, you probably feel this too when you speak about leadership with your association or in your personal life or in your professional life. It's dangerous to talk about leadership. You're only an aspiring leader, in my mind. You know, you're never a leader. And anyone, whether you get to call it 8 or 18 or 80, that you want to lead others, you realize as soon as you start doing it that you will never know enough, that there's always more mistakes than there are learnings, and that it's just a very humbling experience trying to master the art of helping other people see what we could accomplish together. And so and I mean it sincerely, it's with very deep humility that I approach all of you, knowing where you come from and knowing what you do in your lives. And it's with deep humility that I approach my own experience, that I presume that I have something to share. I don't know, I know that I haven't learned it all. And every day I learn that more acutely. But I've learned a few things, and as the title of the presentation said on the last slide, I've learned them mainly by doing the wrong things. And so I wanted to just briefly share a few of the things that I've learned through business and trying to create change in the world about how we together can make the world a better place. And that is the viewpoint that I start from. It's a viewpoint that I think every conscious observer of the world condition shares. Whether you articulate it the same way as I would articulate it doesn't really matter to me, but the framework I start from is the world needs help. At Plenty we say hope needs help. We desperately want something better for ourselves. We want something better personally. We want something better, those of us who have families, for our children. We want something better for our neighbors. We want something better for our country. We want something better for the world. And to be a leader in my book, particularly to be a leader in the sector in which I aspire to lead, is to know that the world isn't what it could be. And that's not right. The fact that the world isn't what it could be is not how it should be, if that makes sense. And that's an interesting place to be if you think about what leadership is. Leadership is about calling first that fact to reality and saying, this isn't where we should be as a society. This isn't where we should be as a team. This isn't where we should be as a company. This isn't where we should be as an alumni association. And isn't it interesting that the kind of colloquially, or the conventional wisdom of leadership is that leaders are these charismatic, visionary people, when a lot of times leadership starts with saying, that's just wrong. Yeah, we're grumpy, aren't we? We're never satisfied. We're perfectionists. We're people who we see a lot of gray clouds. We see a lot of half-full glasses, and one of the things I've learned that I want to share today is how that matches, how that dissatisfaction with the world condition gets paired with aspiration about igniting people to do something more powerful. None of this, I will tell you, none of this was what I was thinking maybe 20 years ago we had met. I was in my mid-20s, you can do the math on that, people out there. And some of you can see. I graduated from a school nearly as good as Northwestern, the University of Rochester, really determined that I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and kind of bumped around for 5 or 6 or 7 years doing odd things. I was a starving artist for a little bit. I've always been incapable of working for someone else, and so I've started a lot of businesses mainly out of necessity, unable to tolerate bosses. It's not a great trait, I'm not proud of it, but it's true. And really just did some odd things, lived in Evanston, worked in an association, worked in a nonprofit, worked in nonprofit technology. I do a lot of speaking to college students now, and I say I worked in the internet boom, and then I have to say the first internet boom. And, we were trying to sell socks online, and it's going to be huge, people will buy Pez. That one worked out. That one worked out well. And so I was, you know, an aimless 20-something. And that gives me hope, by the way. There's a lot of negativity about Generation Y and millennials, and I'm hugely bullish on millennials and their social activation, and I don't buy into the fact that they're selfish and self-centered, because I was selfish and self-centered, and I'm hopefully turning out okay. All of that changed for me. I can tell you exactly the day. It was January 10th, 1999, in a really dreary suburb of Cleveland, the suburb I grew up in, on a really dreary January day for Cleveland. And if anyone, well, you know the Great Lakes, right? You know January, worse than 10 degrees and snowing sideways is 33 degrees and raining. Remember that? Walking to class, you turn around and go back to your dorm room. One of those days in January, in a really dreary hospital in the suburb that I grew up in, and I kid you not, there's a little bit of Dickinsonian drama to this, but in the basement of the hospital, not even a room with windows, and a really dreary looking doctor said to me a sentence that I'm sure was the only thing he was correct about in terms of his relationship with my family. He said, "There's nothing more we can do." And he was talking about my mom. And it was a defining moment for me. And I think everyone has one, you know, whether it's about looking in the eyes of your children, or being in a car accident, or not getting a promotion, or getting terminated, or getting a promotion and realizing, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Or losing a loved one. You have a moment where the fork in the road is so clear to you, you know? And he was right about that. By the way, she died 2 days later, my mother did, of cancer, on my dad's birthday. So just like, again, that you couldn't write it more. And the irony is so deep there. And I remember he said that to me, and I remember a day and a half later, waking up. I stayed with my mom overnight. My dad had gone home. I remember watching her die and just thinking everything's different. And I need to be something now. And I remember seeing the fork in the road. And I think the fork in the road for me was, you either agree that there's nothing more to do. And a lot of people in our world end up agreeing with that. People die of cancer. It happens all the time. It's too bad, right? Some children will never be able to read. That's just the way that it is. People step on landmines and they lose a leg. It happens, There's externalities with business, and the world gets polluted, but that's what progress is, right? There's a lot of ways we say, right, there's nothing more we can do. And I had such a vivid, I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't spiritual, it was internal, a vivid feeling of, that's wrong. There's always more to do. There's always more to do. And I will live in a reaction to that doctor, right? Even if the thing that's more to do is, doctors shouldn't say, there's nothing more to do. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to do something as a reaction to this. And it was, in the ways, all of those, your personal big event, whatever it was, it changes you. And, at the time, by this point, 1999, I was kind of luckily lucked myself into a wonderful marriage, and my wife and I were in Salt Lake City, and we were working in the nonprofit sector for a company that was trying to create web-enabled learning technology. Actually, we lost. Blackboard won. So it's with a little bit. I'm now a student again, as Sarah said. Every time I log into the class and see how fun Blackboard is. Salt in the wounds. Although, I think I will be graduated by this time, but they did just announce that Blackboard's going away. Anyway, I digress. In any event, I ended up kind of, again, had this massive clarity moment that, like all massive clarity moments, took then a year or two to gestate. And I just ended up saying, well, now I'm too old and I'm too stupid to pursue the sciences. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to cure cancer and really probably have too many skeletons to be in politics, so I'm not going to inform policy. But you know what I can do? I can power that. And I talked myself into fundraising. I talked myself into it, and then I talked my way into a fundraising firm, which is where I met Sarah, and was so grateful to have met Sarah. She's a star. She's a keeper. You got to keep her around. And basically said to this point, the owner of the fundraising firm, look, I do project management. I make big things move, and isn't that what fundraising's about? And the firm created fundraising events, and I was good at sales, I guess. So he hired me, and I started to do that. And I'm making the story really long. How much time do you have, by the way? Let's wheel that bar in here. Anyway, long story short. I should have cut it to 2 lessons, not 4 lessons. Long story short, in another it ended up being a wonderful irony. I didn't know it at the time. The owner of the company, who was really charismatic and really tough to work with, but really had a vision, was terrible at business. And the company went bankrupt a couple years later. And so I became the entrepreneurial in the way that some people become entrepreneurial, just because I had nothing else to do. So there was this list of clients. I had this idea now that I could raise money and help. And through that, I started with 2 other friends and partners, a company called Event 360, which, as Sarah said, did large-scale fundraising events. This is a property that's actually still running. I'm not at Event 360 anymore, and we'll talk about that, but this is something called the Breast Cancer 3-Day. Now it's called the 3-Day for the Cure. It's a 3-day walk to raise money for breast cancer. You may recognize that's in San Francisco, but they happen all over the country, and that was one of many great clients that we had, and I'm really proud of this. It's about a $15 million company, so a small company, and particularly in Kellogg language, it's not a titan of industry company, but it was great size, 200 employees, and when we hit our 10th year, had directly raised almost $1 billion for charity. And I felt like this is a good start. It's really how I felt. I'm just that kind of perfectionist, and that the glass is always a little half empty. I want the silver lining to be on the other side of the cloud, but sometimes you got to see the gray cloud first. And so as we approached our 10th anniversary, I started to really think, again, I started to feel that fork in the road coming for me. And there were a number of different reasons why. One was I went to Kellogg. So at age 37, I decided I probably should learn about business. I got a lot of employees. So I should know what I'm doing. It turns out there's no test when you start a company to know if you actually should be able to operate the company, that you don't get a driver's license or anything. And that explains your boss's behavior, by the way. Just to fill you in on what's going on. Like, whoa, we'll get a license for that. So that's one thing that happened. I went to Kellogg, I went to the executive program, formative experience, transformative experience, not formative, formative and transformative. And just learning the rigor and the models gave me language to help describe what I wanted the business to be, but to help me describe what I wanted to be. So that was one, big, what do I want to, genesis of the next fork. The next was really out of the requests of our clients, we started to do more consulting work. I just realized it's louder now, so if you couldn't hear me, I'm sorry. We started to do more consulting work. Nonprofits started to come to us and say, we don't want you to actually set up tents and run the event, but can you give us some insight on strategy and positioning? And this was playing right into what I was learning at Kellogg. And I found it fascinating. And before big data was, a buzz phrase, and before predictive analytics was kind of the flavor of the week, to Event 360 was leading the fundraising space, at least as far as I could tell, in terms of harnessing some of the analytical tools I was learning to Kellogg to help try to predict where we could get more fundraising revenue. And so I was getting activated around doing something different. But the biggest thing that happened that made me want to take a different fork in the road was, I was going to business school at the time of the
worst recession that hopefully any of us will live through. And it was a fascinating time, a terrible time for everyone, a fascinating time to go to business school, but a really fascinating time to work with nonprofits. And this is where I take another quick digression and say, I firmly believe in the need and power of the third sector. You know, we need government. Government has a role in creating huge change, even though I don't always like to be asked to pay for it. Government's an important force, right? And I really believe, here's Kellogg talking, I really believe that business is an important force for social change. But we need something else, because the reality is you can only regulate certain kinds of social change, and that's what government does. And you can only monetize other kinds of social change, and that's what business does. But some things you can neither regulate nor monetize. You need a third entity, right? You can't force people to care about child amputees from landmines. You can't sell that, really. You can't make people feel sympathy for that. So I feel strongly that we need a third sector. And this is the third thing that leads to the fork. What happened to the third sector during the recession was really, really damaging, and I think has extended into today. The third sector needs to be the dreaming sector, right? The third sector is the sympathy sector, the heart and soul sector, the passion sector. Yes, maybe you aren't required to do this, and yes, maybe you don't want to buy this, but we know you're a good person with a soul, and other good people with souls need your help. That's what the third sector does. But during the recession, that dialogue changed. And I started to go into meetings with clients, and I would hear this, we call it at Plenty, we call it the language of scarcity. You know, instead of meetings being about, we want to double our revenue, how can we do that? We want to open 3 more summer camps for kids. How can we do that? We have a groundbreaking new drug that we want to fund. We need to go into trials, but we can't get a grant for it. Our clients started to say, we just want to get back to where we were. You know, we're down 5%. We just cut 10% of our staff. We need to get back to 0. We started to joke that flat was the new up. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. It really took me all the way back to January 10th, 1999, of saying, this is not good. It's not good for the sector. It's not good for my kids. It's not good for humanity. But it's not good for me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in the just good enough. You know, is there enough to go around? And so I made a very difficult decision for myself, and frankly for a lot of people, and talked to my 2 partners and said, I don't really like what we're doing. I'm not engaged in it anymore. I want to be doing more groundbreaking strategy work. I think there's a way to harness these analytics for change in a way that we're not getting to. I want to be someone who's pushing clients to think differently, not worried if they get their noses out of joint and they don't, you know, keep us on retainer anymore. And after a lot of very strenuous, difficult discussions, you know, my partners and I parted as friends, and I left. I left this baby of mine and started a new, not a baby, a teenager called Plenty. And it's a small firm. We're 7 people, about to be 9, which I got to tell you is a really nice change after 200. And I know for some of you, 200 is like one division of one department of maybe what you manage. For me, 200 was, I can't keep track of 200 people's names, let alone their spouses' names. And I started a company called Plenty. We're almost a year old. We've had a fantastic year. And it's just, as you can see from just our brand, it's a company that, you know, wears on its sleeve the vision that it has for the world, which is there's plenty for everyone. There's enough food, there's enough water, there's enough money, there's enough opportunity, there's enough engagement for us as employees to feel great about our work. There are enough donors, there are enough volunteers, there are enough people for your committee that doesn't have enough people on it. It's out there. It might not be easy to get to, it might not be easy to unlock, but it's there, and we got to be smart, and we got to be nimble, and we got to be scrappy, but it's there for us. And so that's where you're finding me in my leadership journey, is having made a real important choice to walk down the fork that says, there's always more to do. I'm a year into making another choice to walk down another fork that says there's plenty for everyone. And it's in that context that I want to share these 4 lessons. I've learned so many things the wrong way. We could talk until 9 o'clock, but I picked 4 that I thought might be relevant to you. And I tried to integrate them into the language that I know you've been using the last couple days. So the first one is about alignment. And I'm watching the clock, realizing I did the introduction twice as long as I should have. So I'm going to go quickly on these so you can get to your next activity. But, you know, Patrick Lencioni, anyone read Patrick Lencioni? Fantastic management author. I'll show you one of his books in a second. He's written fantastic books, The 4 Temptations of a CEO, a book about consulting called Getting Naked, a book about alignment called The Advantage. He talks about the fact that misalignment of values is like a crack in the foundation of a house. And you don't notice it on the second floor until the second floor window falls out of it. And I learned that. That's one of the reasons I left Event 360, and it's too long to describe here. But I had 2 partners, and one of the things I started to realize is though we liked each other a lot, and I would consider them among my best friends, we weren't aligned on what was important to us. And now when I talk at Kellogg, I say there's 2 lessons I have here. One is that cash is more important than revenue. That's a very Kellogg lesson, you know. You look a lot at Kellogg at the P&L. The P&L is BS. Look at the cash flow. Cash is more important than revenue, but values alignment is more important than cash. And if you have a team of people who agree on what they're about, you can do whatever. You know, hire for team first. If you have the greatest business model ever, but the people don't get along, and not even, maybe they get along, but they don't agree on why they're doing it, you're going to have trouble. And I don't care if that's your family unit, your alumni association, your church, your school, your work. This to me is the most important lesson that I've ever learned, is that people have to be in agreement about what they're doing and why. At Plenty, one of the things I really enjoyed, this is giving me a little trouble, is I had a chance to erase the slate and start again. I handpicked the people I wanted to come with me. And the first thing we did, we took 2 days, we went to Galena, rented a house, did a retreat for 2 days. This was about a year ago. We didn't talk about the business model at all. We read this book called The Advantage, which is about just values alignment. We spent 2 days talking about what is important to us. You know? What makes you feel engaged? What makes you feel alive? What makes you upset? Where's your boundaries? Where's your right and your left? And then we used a book you might be familiar with that is featured prominently on our website called StrengthsFinder. We actually took StrengthsFinder. If you go to Plenty Consulting, our website, you will see in the team bios, we don't call out StrengthsFinder, but we give it a couple nods. You know, we say, we're futurists, we're activators, and this was a very valuable tool for us in the team because it just gave us a way. You know, Myers-Briggs is neat. There's a lot. DISC is useful, but to not talk about personality profiles, talk about people's ability to impact, right? And we actually, now that we're growing the team, have asked incoming candidates to take StrengthsFinder, not because we're necessarily trying to match the strengths, but we want to see their reaction to taking it. We're looking at the meta information. You know, do they scoff when we ask them to take this diagnostic? Then we know they're not someone that we want to be with. So in terms of the theme of the conference and questions that I've asked myself as a leader, the idea of these is it's in language that you would say to yourself, you know, how do you create values alignment? Strengths, we say, I believe we each have something to offer. Values, I think it's important that we share something in common. Authenticity, this is a really tough one for a lot of people, I've realized. I'm willing to share what's important to me. And then trust, I trust you when I share that you know, you won't make fun of it. And you can trust me to do the same thing. These are key things for me. And again, I'm not coming at you saying I've figured it out. I'm coming at you saying this is the language that I've found helps, at least at Plenty, us create something fantastic. So that's lesson 1. Lesson 2 is about this idea that I talked about at the beginning about how leaders sometimes are people who say, that's not right. This idea of vision and reality. Man, there's so many metaphors about strategy and about achievement that are all focused on the future, right? Following the North Star, climbing to the top of the mountain, creating a common vision. And one thing I've learned, both when things are going well and more importantly when things aren't going well, through a couple periods of Event 360 where we had real financial struggles, or in Starting Plenty when there's a lot of doubt, it is important to create a common vision. But I feel like something that most of the popular leadership texts don't talk about is it's also important that people agree on where we are now, Sometimes there's a crisis. There's a great saying, never turn down the opportunity presented by a great crisis. Sometimes when you have a burning platform, it's really easy to rally people. But lots of times you don't have that. And lots of times people want to buy into the top of the mountain, but what nobody's talking about is how far down we are right now, right? We spend all of our time talking about how great it's going to, we have these goals, we got to hit these goals, how great it's going to be when we achieve them, put it in language of the university. This is our campaign. Here's where it's going to be fantastic. The buildings are going to be shiny. What people don't talk about is the reality of now. Where are we now? That $500 million goal or $1 billion goal means we're just $1 billion away from it. And this is very difficult. In my mind, 1 or 2 days, so one of the things we do with nonprofits, usually we're hired to help with revenue issues, but almost all the time, revenue issues are caused by strategy issues, and in every case there's strategy issues are the result of leadership issues. So almost all of our work involves getting a leadership team in a room. And I can promise you, in a day or maybe 2 days of the right curriculum, you can get people to agree on the goal. It takes weeks and months to get people to agree on the reality. Think about the language you hear in meetings, right? Someone gives the report on, we missed the campaign numbers. Oh, well, I just wanted to say that the creative was really great. Good job. Everybody was working hard, We lost the game, and everybody's talking about, we scored that goal at the end. It's very difficult for us. I don't know if it's culturally or what it is, but we don't get trained on the language of let's talk about the reality. And I don't want to talk about the reality because I want to be a killjoy. I want to talk about the reality so we can accurately map which path up the mountain we're going to take. Because otherwise, it's just BS. It's just dreams. So it's so great. Have you been in those meetings where we talk about how great it's going to be when we achieve the quarter goals and everybody leaves and everybody's like, we'll never make that happen. So you got to get people talking about what's never going to happen. We have to have a shared vision. We also have to have a shared understanding of reality. To me, this is like the Leadership 201 that I'm learning because I want to be Mr. It's going to be great. And learning how to say, wow, we have a lot of work to do, and getting everyone in alignment about what the work is takes a different kind of mentality. So how can you build that? To me, here are some phrases. Strengths. We're going to get the skills we need, right, is a really powerful thing to say, because this is a doubt in people's mind. People are looking around the table going, we're missing something. Okay, we're going to figure out what we're missing, and we're going to get it. Values. It's important to me that we're going to create something together, not that we achieve something great. We're going to build to something together. Authenticity. We're willing to discuss the elephants. We're willing to point out the sacred cows. Maybe we're willing to sacrifice a few of them. And trust. I trust that there's a long way to go from here to there, but I know this team will get it together. I know that we'll accomplish it. 3, ambiguity. It comes down to this. Almost every group I think I've worked with, and again, this is something I'm struggling with too, partly because we find it difficult to talk about reality. We find it really difficult to assign accountabilities, And most of the time when I go into an organization and there's leadership issues, there's a lot of this. And not direct, active, like blame creating. Active blame creating is actually easier to deal with, right? Oh, she did it, her fault. Okay, you're willing to put that on the table? Let's talk about that. That's great. What's hard to deal with is the passive confusion that wishy-washy leadership creates. And here's what it sounds like in a meeting. You got 10 people in a meeting, and wow, it's really clear. We got to get to these quarterly goals because we're not close. And we agree that we're not close. Cool. All right. So Sarah and Mike and Joe, why don't you guys meet on that and tell us, in the next few days, meet on that. Give us a follow-up and let us know how it goes. And Sarah and Mike and Joe each go away and they say, is Sarah doing that? Is Mike doing that? Is Joe doing it? And the other 7 people are just glad that they weren't named on the list, right? Same thing. Think about yourself. Think about when you want to avoid committing to something. Your spouse or your golfing buddy or whatever sends you a text or calls you. Hey, you want to get together on Saturday? Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. Let me check. Not sure what I'm doing. Let me check. Ambiguity is the refuge, right? It's the polite way of saying, and we've developed a code where the person on the other end is supposed to realize when you say, I don't know, let me check, you actually mean no. No, I'm not brave enough to tell you no because I guess I care enough about you to, keep your feelings intact, but please don't text me about this again. It's language that we grow up in. And I notice myself doing it with my team. It's in the to line, there's 3 people in the to line when you say, immediate follow-up needed, and it goes to 4 people or 3 people. We're wishy-washy. We're wishy-washy, or some organizations are wishy-washy. And it's really the bane of getting things done. I've realized that great leaders, they just declare war on ambiguity. They're ruthless about clarity. They repeat the business plan over and over. They boil a business plan down so it's not 20 pages. So I have a one-hand rule. If you can't keep your priorities to 5 fingers, there's too many priorities. If you can't remember them without looking down and reading, you have too many topics, right? You ever see, look at any company in turnaround. Here's the turnaround plan. It's 50 pages long, and it has, no. Contrast that with GE. We're going to be first or second in every market we enter, that kind of thing. Leadership is about making things super, super clear. Volunteers, I know that you have other things to do. We're going to meet once every month on Saturday morning. I really need you to come to 3 of those meetings a quarter, or whatever. I'm sure it's not that easy, so I don't even want to presume that it is. But this is one I'm really working on for myself. How do you clarify? Here's phrases that I think help. Hey, even talented people need direction. That's what achievement's about, right? That's why great teams have coaches, because sometimes people need to point out what we're doing wrong. Your empowerment is more important to me than my comfort. That's something I find myself trying to say to my team. It's more important to me that we have a difficult conversation that's hard for me, that makes it easier for you to do your job. I'll be upfront about what I think needs to happen, and you can trust that I'm going to take time to clarify where we're going and why. So that's my third. And my last is passion. You've kind of already seen a little bit of that from me. When we started Plenty, one of the really fun things about Plenty, like I said, was erasing the board and doing it again. And knowing and not knowing I still had a lot to learn, but knowing that I was further along than I was 12 years ago when I founded Event 360, and really investing time, like I said, in the team and what we would read, but also in this kind of amorphous thing that we call culture. Spending time writing, we wrote a manifesto. We actually wrote 5 different versions of the manifesto, and if you go on our website, you can find it hidden. It's not on the top nav. It's somewhere that you have to look for it. But we talk about it every week. Here's what we wrote. It's where we got to language about we believe in a world where there's plenty for everyone. It's even choosing the brand was fun. Saying, what could this brand be? And looking at tactical choices like applied analytics all the way to really aspirational choices. And obviously we made an aspirational choice. And one of the things you will see, actually I think the first word you will see on our website is plenty. Right under that you'll see this phrase, hearts on sleeves, shovels in hands. And we're trying to get to kind of 2 things about the way that we work that we're going to, there's a lot of change that's needed in the world. I'll go back to what I opened with. We say that the rope of difference has a lot of open spots, and just grab one. We need a lot of help. Hope needs help. So pick up a shovel, right? Start digging somewhere. because without hard work, none of it's going to happen. But we can't be afraid of our own passion. The passion's the engine. So what we're trying to say is, passion by itself is a Hallmark card. And work by itself, we've all seen the result of where passionless or characterless or valuesless work can take us. You need both of them together. And writing this was really freeing for me because as I told you earlier, when I got to that second fork in the road, it took a lot of courage, I think, for me. I wouldn't have said it this way at the time, but it took a lot of courage for me to say, I started this company that's 10 years old, that's very successful, and I don't like it. It's not interesting to me anymore. And not that the people are bad, the client's cool, but it's not what I like anymore. And so writing this, this was now 15 months ago, writing this phrase, I just felt this huge lift, this huge relief of saying something that I wanted to say, but also charting a course. Anyway, so fast forward to a couple nights ago, I was traveling with one of our great, awesome team members, my friend Carrie. I've known her for years and years and years, and she knows me better than I know myself. She knows my family. She's babysat my kids. I mean, she's great friends with my wife. Just, it's one of those relationships, but it's founded in professional. I didn't know her outside of work. And I love those friendships. In fact, most of my friendships are like that now, that we weren't personal friends, we weren't neighbors, we weren't friends because of our kids. We developed a professional respect, and out of that, out of seeing people under fire, seeing them perform, you develop a respect that you can't emulate, in my mind, anywhere else. And we're talking a little bit about this, and she knew that this was Wednesday night, I think. She knew that I was coming here. She was asking me, she was grilling me on, no, you're not going to do 10 points, are you? Because and I said, no, I'm going to do 4. And she said, you're a talker. You're going to do 4. Should you do 2? Should you do 3? I'm going to do 4. And I had the first 3, vision versus reality and ambiguity and clarifying values. And I said, maybe there is 3. And we kind of went off the topic and we went on to someplace else. And she was telling me the story about seeing a mutual friend of ours whom we used to work with, with whom we used to work, with whom we no longer work. And she saw him a few weeks ago, and they went to dinner, and they caught up, and he asked her, how's Shuck? People call me, I have one of those last names, you call me by my last name. How's Shuck? And Carrie was telling me, I told him, I've never seen you happier in the whole time I've known you. And it was just such great feedback from someone I care about how I hope to be, right? And how I think I feel right now. I'm waking up early. I'm waking up before the alarm goes off. I'm drinking one less cup of coffee. I'm staying at work a little bit later. My kids help me pick the brand. My wife helped me pick the name. We use a phrase, fully engaged and fully deployed. I feel like I'm fully engaged with my work and it's stretching me as far as I want to go. And that's in my little presumptuous last few minutes. Here's my lesson, and this is a lesson that gets a lot of reaction when I talk to college students, but I wonder if it means something to you as well. You have to demand your own passion. This is what I've learned about business and change and leadership. You have to love your work. You're too good. I don't even know you, and I know you have too many talents. You are too good to waste your time at something you don't enjoy doing. It's just that simple. And that doesn't mean every day is going to be a picnic, because it's not. There's going to be really rough days. And actually, when you have really rough days and you get up and you come back, that might be a sign that you are fully engaged and fully deployed. But I do not buy into the language that work is work and professional is, and home is home, and work is always going to be drudgery, and sometimes you need to choose making money over making a difference. It's BS. It's a false choice. It's the language of scarcity, is what I'd say. You have too many talents, and there's too much need for you not to find a way to match those. And so For people who are sitting saying, oh man, when Sunday night becomes dreadful to you, you know, when Monday morning is ugly, when on Thursday, a lot of Thursday afternoons you're in a row, you hear yourself saying, I'm so glad tomorrow's Friday. That is a sign. That is the universe telling you, wake up. I probably listened to that in my own head for 4 years before I said, you know, it's time to have a really difficult conversation and I'm going to do something different. It's the best thing I've ever done, other than meet my wife and hire Sarah. So here's what it looks like for me, you know. The others are for your team. This is for you. There's countless ways I could be employed. My fulfillment and the fulfillment of my team actually matters to me. Direct fulfillment, not fulfillment as a result of amassing a dollar figure so I can buy fulfillment. Direct fulfillment. I'll be true to my own interests, and I know that I can find a rewarding place to use my talents. It's powerful, right? It's powerful stuff. And that's what I think I've learned. That's what I am learning about business and social change, is that there's need in the world. There's different kinds of need, and that's why the universe or the Lord or whatever your mythos is created different kinds of people. There's fulfillment out there for us that's waiting, and our part of it is to walk towards it, right? Something's knocking at the door. Your job is to turn the knob. And sometimes there's opportunities where when you pull that knob and the door doesn't open, that's not the sign that you walk away. Put your shoulder against the door. Shove it open. We need your help. We need you to feel alive and fulfilled. And we need you to spread that to other people. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do for the Wildcats. And I hope you have a great evening. Thank you very much.